Welcome back to Umineko. Today we're starting on the answer arcs, or the sort of episode 5. And the last time we left off, Battler and Beatrice both left us with some really cryptic words at the end of episode 4. In case you don't already know, my name is Lorelei. I've been reading Umineko for almost a year now. I make theory videos at the end of every episode to kind of wrap up and give you my solutions, my theories. So if that's your thing, go and check out episode 4's theory video on the top. I also stream on Twitch and now YouTube once a week on Fridays or Saturdays at 10 p.m. JST. If that's your thing, come and pop by and say hi to me. But without further ado, let's just get right into today's episode. Oh my god. This scared me. We're here. A new place. Even. Oh, it's kind of cool. We're starting on episode 5. Oh my god, I don't know why, I just got chills. Let's read what episode 5 says. End of the Golden Witch. Good morning. Please enjoy the new game with its new game master. I say that, but the game has already reached its climax. The culprit has been cornered and merely awaits checkmate. I am sure there will be something you can spot from this clearer perspective. This difficulty is fairly easy. What could possibly fool you now? I don't know. I think almost anything can fool me, but I still want to try my best. And let's see, I hope it's as easy as it claims to be. Fuck. Sorry, that scared me.
殺したらそなたが歪めるだろうその表情が楽しいからの他に何の理由が必要なのか
Who is her? Angie?
ほらほら目をつむらずにちゃんと見ろよ
Oh no, I think that was from one of the earlier episodes, right?
ほらほらほらほら魔法だよ家具だよそなたがどんなにわらわや魔法の存在を否定しようともほらほらほらほらほらほら悪いなバトラー結構面白かったぜしかしお師匠様の言う通りにしてみたんだが本当に結構いいとこまで行けたな何でもツンツンと残虐を尽くした後に程よくへたれて出れてみせると好感度ってやつが大幅アップするんだろ
Yeah, this was after she tricked us in episode 3. I'm still so salty about that. Back in the Golden Land? That lonely tone was the sound of desolate wind blowing by. The color of the glittering flower petals on the rose bush was that of gold. The group of gold butterflies which had once danced through this golden rose garden like fluttering rose petals could no longer be seen anywhere. The master of the Golden Land is the Golden Witch Beatrice. She could be called inhumane and cruel, arrogant and outrageous, and also naive and simple. That laugh of hers, which lost its grace more and more the longer it continued, could no longer be heard. The Golden Witch Beatrice sat like a doll, resting in a deck chair adorned as beautifully as the golden rose garden. That gave me chills. She wasn't relaxing there. Empty-eyed, never responding to any questions, and yet still not permitted to sleep. Beatrice was sitting there as if she was a doll. Virgilia. Her hair was down and Virgilia was carefully fixing it up with a comb. If Beatrice had been complaining about this and that regarding her hairstyle, then it would have been clear that she was the usual Beato. However, she gave no responses and showed no reactions. So instead, it only looked like Virgilia was combing the golden hair of a large doll. Alongside them, there was a table. On it was a chessboard, along with a mix of black and white pieces in an all-out battle. However, something about this setup looked different from normal chess. It might have been a game similar to chess, but not identical. And on the other side, sitting back in his chair as he contemplated his next move, was a young man. Oh, not from Battler's perspective anymore. And also kind of weird, though, that Battler's just kind of sitting there next to what seems to be like a dead Beatrice. No, perhaps he wasn't thinking of his next move. Every once in a while, he would change the positions of the pieces, reconsidering the situation every time he changed it. Maybe he was reconstructing previous games, trying to discover the thought process behind those moves. It feels very much like a double meaning here, right? There's the games of previous chess matches and of the previous games we had with them as the pieces. In the past, Kinzo, the Ushiromiya family head, once likened studying chess games to taking a journey through the thoughts of the old masters. Ushiromiya Battler was on a journey in search of the Golden Witch's thought process, which had led her to create these arrangements and make these moves. Battler took a black piece which he had only just moved forward and returned it to its original place, sighing deeply. Battler's pieces were white. However, on that chessboard, the side facing Battler was Black's territory. He was stepping through the game from Beato's perspective. Is this what episode 5 onwards gonna be like? The answer arc's gonna be Battler? Revisiting the other games from Beato's perspective? Is that possibly how it's gonna go? Oh, a smirk?
お前の指し手はやればやるほどに理解できねえぜ。
I really like new expressions from them. Even Battler didn't expect that Beato would respond to that statement. No, he was still holding on to the hope that there might be a chance of her responding, and it only made it sound as though he was talking to himself. Oh my goodness. Beato with her hair down, even. It's really creepy, scary. And still, I have yet to know, I don't know what the relationship between Battler and Beatrice really is. Beato's eyes reflected nothing, and her mouth told nothing. But her face is moving. After begging him to kill her, the Golden Witch had become a corpse which had given up on living. She wasn't sleeping. She was forbidden to step down from this game, and therefore sleep was not permitted. So she must have heard. However, his words probably hadn't reached her heart. The Golden Witch would no longer sneer at Battler's moves, nor would she praise them or belittle them. Beatrice was no longer anything more than a living doll. Even so, she would glance at him every once in a while. It would be an empty glance, but a glance nonetheless. Okay, she's not dead. She is not dead. Sometimes she would seem to make some sort of gesture or even move her lips. However, her movements were never able to communicate anything to Battler.
どうやったらこの局面でこの指し手になるわけだ。わけがわからねえんだよ。お前の指し手はよ。
ベアとバトラ君が話しかけていますよ。
It's so sad.
なんとか言えよ。クスクスとかゲラゲラとか、いつもの黄色い笑いでいいから。
It seemed unbelievable. That shrill laugh of Beato's would never be heard again. However, even if she couldn't answer, his voice was surely reaching her. Battler was talking to her because he believed this. So he had said the same thing once more.
どうやったらこの局面でこの指し手になるわけだ。わけがわからねえぜ。お前の指し手はよ。
この子の考えることはわけがわかりませんか？
Virgilia answered in her disciple's stead. Virgilia is so friendly here, it's kinda giving me whiplash. Up to this point, she had done her best to avoid speaking for Beato. After all, there was a chance that Beato would respond in some way, and Virgilia didn't want to be the one to take that opportunity away from her. Which meant that Battler was being forced to bear with his silence. Until Beato herself answered. Virgilia could no longer bear to watch him like this. And Battler too wanted to have a conversation with Virgilia, with faith that their words would reach Beato's heart. I kind of wonder if this whole thing is an analogy or something else.
さっぱりだな。ベアトの立場になって、こうして駒を動かせば動かすほどにわからなくなる。
The successful execution of a serial murder following an epitaph. He was stepping through the games from the witch side with that as a victory condition, but he just couldn't make it fit with Beato's moves. He could see several incomprehensible moves in the records of their past games that clearly conflicted with that victory condition, but it's also because Beato herself seems to chase that fun and game with Battler, right? That sometimes she would purposefully not win just so that they can continue playing the game.
さっぱりわからねえ。
But I wonder if that's not the only reason why she continues the game. I wonder what will happen once she wins the game. Is there something that she's running away from? Is it something that she doesn't want to see at the end of her own victory?
こいつの思考を探る旅路はあまりに険しすぎるぜ。
でもあなたは投げ出さないのですね。
ああ、約束した。
Kill me. Let me die.
俺はこいつを安らかに死なせてやると約束した。そしてそれは俺にしかできない。
Beato's right ankle was bound with a heavy, cold steel shackle. It wasn't tied to anything, so it didn't restrict her movement. However, it symbolized restriction. It was a visualization of the restriction that prevented her from leaving the game with either victory or loss. And the shackle was probably hurting her. The mercilessly cold steel shackle was tormenting her over and over inside her waking dream. Speaking. So there was never any relief in her empty expression. Her eyelids would sometimes tremble like she was having a bad dream, and every once in a while she would let out a pained gasp. Okay, that was not speaking. Unless I win, Beato will never be released from the curse that prevents her from resting in peace. So Beatrice was trying to let him win?
良いのですか？第5のゲームはもう始まっているようですよ。
興味ね。
Why should I take part in any game without Beato as an opponent? If that's the only alternative, then stepping through past games on a journey in search of Beato's thought process is a much better use of my time. No. Don't look at me like that. No, really? Against Lambda? No, I'm scared. I'd rather have Beato as my partner? No, opponent. Yeah, I do. I have many.
依存だらけよ。ベアとは戦いを放棄して人事不正。ベアとの不先輩でゲームオーバーでしょ。
かにベアとはいろいろとあったんで、今はちょっぴりノックアウト気味。でも戦う気力を失ったわけじゃない。だからつまり、私は介助役ってわけ。わかる？
Beatrice was lying down on a deck chair almost as though she was sleeping. However, she wasn't sleeping, and she wasn't awake either. She was nothing more than a living doll who had given up on victory, asked Battler to perform her last rites, and entrusted everything to him. Of course, no fifth game would ever be prepared if everyone just sat around. So Lambda Delta had succeeded Beato as a game master and proclaimed that she would prepare the next game. Oh, I'm scared. I don't like it.
ふざけるな。これは俺とベアとのゲームだぞ。お前ら、どこの誰か知らねえが、勝手に話を進めるんじゃねえ。
あんたに意見は求めてないわ。どうすんの、ベル。
I'm just kind of wondering, but doesn't Battler know them? I mean, to a degree, right? Why is he acting like he doesn't know them? Or I'm just thinking too much into it.
受けるの？受けない？
いいわ。あんたが引き継ぎなさい。
なんだと？ふざけるな！お前ら何者か知らねえが、俺とベアトを無視して勝手に話を進めるんじゃね
え！落ち着きなさいよ。確かにプレイヤーが変われば察しても変わる。あんたにとっては戸惑うことも多いかもしれないけど、それでも大きなヒントになりうるでしょ？
知らねえよ！勝手なこと言って仕切ってんじゃねえ！
ベアとのゲームを4つも繰り返して何もわからないんでしょ？ならプレイヤーが変わるのは大きなヒントになると思うけれど。
Thank you. I think this would really help.
大きなお世話だ！これはベアトが用意し、俺を対戦相手に指定した俺たちのゲームだ。どこから湧いてきたのかもしれないお前らにかき回されるのはごめんだ。
ならベアトを起こして次の準備をさせて。できる？
ベアトはしばらく起きねえよ。それに新しいゲームなんて必要ねえ。あいつがこれまでに出題してきた4つのゲームの譜面だけで十分だ。仮に第5のゲームがあるとしても、それはベアトが出題し、俺に挑むものだけで十分だ。お前らには何の関係もない。
Battler couldn't hide his irritation at these two witches called Lambda Delta and Bruncastle, who had shown up after the game's start and who had started to try and continue it on their own. It looked like these witches were of an even higher rank than Beato. So high, in fact, that even Beato's master, Virgilia, couldn't come close. Battler had the feeling that he had seen these two several times before. Oh, so I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong. However, this was the first time he had learned their names and spoken to them directly. That's not wrong either, right? So, like, what? Battler's having a mind wipe after every game?
ベアトを起こせず、あんたに次のゲームを準備もできない。だから私が次のゲームを用意するわけ。私たちはね、いつ正気を取り戻すかもわからないベアトに、いつまでも付き合ってられるほど気が長くないの。ね、ベルン？
退屈はごめんなの。イライラするほどに。
お前が退屈がろうが。
まあまあ、このパーフェクトなラムダデルタ様に任せなさい。私がゲームマスターを引き継ぐ。大丈夫よ。あんまり絶対完璧にはプレイしないわよ。ベアトっぽく、わけのわかんないフェイクや尻尾、ボーナスヒントをいっぱい用意してあげる。ベアトの世界をより理解するための大きなヒントにしてあげるわよ。
Beato's world. Huh. Letting my voiceless emotions explode, I slammed the table hard. The two witches barely flinched. One grinned. The other looked indifferent, as though nothing had happened. The two of them just stared at me silently, as though they were reproaching me. And her smirk.
何？不満？あんたは私による第5のゲームを降りるっての？それって不先輩？
バトラは降りないわよ。もちろん第5のゲームにも参加するわ。
勝手に決めるんじゃねえ。お前らに俺は付き合わない。知ったことじゃない。
ならやっぱり不先輩ってことよね。このゲームは魔女側の勝ち。人間は屈服ってことでお開きでいいかしら。
降りるなら不先輩でゲーム終了だけどいいの？たった一人残された妹が無限の世界の全てでたどる不幸な境遇を確定させたいのならそれも選択よ。
When Berkastel mentioned Enji, Battler's expression changed instantly.
てめえ、エンジェのことを気安く口にするんじゃねえ。
あなたにこの私、奇跡の魔女ベルンカステルが味方しているからこそ、エンジェにはひょっとしたら家族が帰ってくるかもしれない奇跡の余地が残されてるのよ。あなたが自らそれを捨ててエンジェの無限の未来全てを不幸なものに確定するのもまた私には一興だけれども。
I vaguely understood what she was saying. Until I win in Beato's game, I'll remain trapped in this bizarre world. And if I abandon victory, then most certainly my parents and I will never return to Enji. For Enji's sake, even though I know that witches are toying with me, I must keep on fighting.
なーに？その不満そうな顔。自分の妹をグズグズのひき肉にされた怒り、もうプチプチブチブチ。無数の焼けたペンチで引きちぎって細切れにしていくあの光景。
That's horrible.
今度はちゃんと真正面で見ないとダメ。
Berkastel faced the palm of her right hand upwards. As she did, a pale light gathered there, and some kind of blue glowing crystal appeared there. A scene was reflected on its sharp surface. But it wasn't a scene that surrounded them now. If you looked deep into that crystal, that fragment, then you would probably learn what was reflected on there. If you stared at it, then you would surely witness a scene where Enji finally reached her beloved brother after devoting 12 years of her life to that goal. Oh, no. Only to have her entire body torn to bits while she was still alive. Chills. Immense chills.
Kisama!
12 years, Enji devoted her life to saving Battler and her family. And then that happens. Without thinking, he grabbed her collar, but as soon as he touched whatever made up her form, it disappeared like foam on the waves. And then, as naturally as though she had been there from the beginning, Berkastel was leaning against a distant wall.
あなたがゲームを降りるなら、これはかけらでなく、確定した現実になる。その未来を紡ぐのは、私じゃないわ。あなた自身よ。あなたが決めなさい。最愛の妹の未来を、どうしたいのかを。
It's horrible. They're threatening him, really. Battler's fists shook with anger. But even if he swung them down, he wouldn't be able to hit Berkastel. Like a cat or a phantom, this witch wouldn't even let someone pet her if she didn't wish for it. Besides, she's telling the truth. For Enji's sake, I can't step down from this fight. Even if these unpleasant witches hijack the game board.
さすがベルン。脅し方もえぐいわね。そういうことよ、バトラー。あんたにはゲームを降りることなんて許されてないの。あんたもベアとも、私たちの退屈を紛らわせるゲーム版の駒でしかない。 あんたのそのわけのわかんない怒りやイラつきさえも、私たちには退屈を紛らわす最高のお菓子。まあ、その程度の怒りじゃ、駄菓子程度だけどね。
30円で2枚入ってるカレー味のポテトせんべい程度ね。
It's making me hungry.
魔女とも。
エンジェのためにも戦いなさい。そしてベアトのためにもでしょ。
In a way that was admonishing, or perhaps babying, Brandcastle smiled, tormenting Battler in a similar way to how something too sweet sometimes gives you a headache. The host of this tea party, Beatrice, was absent now, and the guest witches were already making themselves at home.
どうすんの？後ろ宮バトラー、運命に屈しちゃう？降りちゃいなさいよ。魔女の駒にして遊ばれるなんてもうごめんなんでしょ？ベルンの駒は辛いわよ。きっとあんたもエンジェみたいに使い捨てにされるわよ。
あなたに降りる選択肢は与えてない。妹の未来のために戦い続けるの。私は味方よ。その未来にたどり着けるよう、あなたが勝利するまでサポートするわ。私が退屈するまで永遠に。
Witches hate boredom. Battler couldn't allow himself to fall for their provocation and cajolery. These witches knew that he got mad easily, and they were trying to take advantage of that. Battler withstood it all and finally relaxed his clenched fists.
第5のゲームとやらが始めたいなら好きにしろ。
好きにするわよ。あれれ、どこ行くのよ。
Even though Battler had acknowledged this fifth game, he turned his back on them, which surprised Lambda Delta a bit.
お前がベアトの代役を務めるってんなら、そこのベルンカステルとかいう魔女が俺の代役を務めるのも勝手だろ。
道理ね。そうじゃないと不先輩になってしまう。
何よそれ。私が作る渾身のエピソード5をあんた無視するっての？
That's hilarious. Breaking the fourth wall?
失礼しちゃう失礼しちゃう。
バトラーはしばらく休憩するそうよ。それまでの間、私がプレイヤーの代役を務める。それでどう？バトラー。
So, Brandcastle's gonna take over Battler's spot?
そうしやがれ。
なーに、ラムダ。間抜けなバトラじゃなくて、私がプレイヤーだと遊んでくれないの？
そんなわけないわ。ベルンと一緒に遊べて嬉しいわよ。さあさあ、遊びましょう遊びましょう。ラムダデルタ様の超ハイパーでキュートに可愛いエピソード5を一緒に遊びましょうよ。
一応、ベアトの作った世界なのよ。世界観ぶち壊しにしてないでしょうね。
大丈夫だってば。
This is a game created by Beatrice? God.
私そういうのの空気は読める方なのよ。ちゃんとベアトっぽい世界観でもっと面白い物語に仕上げてみせたわ。バトラも休憩終わったら早く戻ってくるのよ。見逃すともったいないわよ。ベアトの秘密に迫れるようなボーナスヒントをたっぷり用意してるんだから。と見せかけてミスリード満載でますますに煙に巻く気なんだけどね。ちょっと、こらバトラー、魔女の話聞いてんの
Without answering, Battler disappeared into the darkness. After shrugging and cackling, The witches immediately started playing with the game board they had stolen from Beato. Stolen?
あの魔女どもにベアとのゲームは理解できるのか？
同じゲーム版を使う以上、この子にできないことはできません。しかし、この子がやらないことはやれます。
やらないこととは何だ？
チェスの道具はチェスで遊ぶために存在します。それを使ってトランプをすることはできない。しかしチェスの駒を相手に投げつけてぶつけたり、チェス盤に落書きしてみたり、そういう行為をすることも不可能ではありません。しかしそれはチェスに対する冒涜だから誰もやらない。
That definitely wouldn't be chess anymore. It looked like Beato's eyes clouded very slightly with sadness.
ふざけやがって。これは俺とベアとのゲームだ。他の誰にも冒涜はさせない。
At the time, gold butterflies gathered and Renove appeared, holding a tea set with black tea.
紅茶のおかわりはいかがですか？
It's the gang, they're here. But last episode, they were all murdering fiends.
もらえるか？
かしこまりました。
What about Renove's cookies?
いかがですか？お嬢様の思考を探る旅は。
さっぱりだが楽しんでるぜ。
しかしよろしいのですか？こちらでくつろがれていても。
あの魔女どもが勝手に進めてるゲームのことか？
ええ。先ほど紅茶をお届けに伺った時にはもう第一の番の殺人が起こり、
Huh?
もうじきその次の殺人も起こりそうな気配でした。
When Beato and I were playing, the game would be paused whenever someone left their seats. However, those witches wouldn't pause that game just because I wasn't around.
ロノウェは奴らのゲームを見たのか？
一部ではございますが。
どうだった？
Renove lifted the pot high with an elegant gesture as he poured the black tea. After he was done, he finally spoke, expressing his thoughts in very few words.
愛がありませんな。
Oh my.
愛ってなんだ？
And he's also saying that Beatrice's way had love?
女性風に申し上げるとです。男性風に申し上げるならば義理が通らぬと申しましょうか。
Dishonorable. I understood what those words meant. When I met Virgilia's eyes, she shook her head slightly and stared at the floor.
上辺は大変よくお嬢様のゲームに似せていると思います。しかし根本が大きく異なっています。
それはベアとのゲームのルールに反することなのか？
いいえ、藩主ラムダデルタ様はお嬢様のゲームのルールを実によく理解なされております。しかし
Battler stood up. There was no need to make Renove stay anymore.
バトラク、
ロノウェ、すまない。せっかく入れてもらったけど紅茶はいらねえぜ。
やはり参られますか？
ああ、俺たちのゲームに部外者はいらない。
I also do want to say that it just kind of popped into my head, but it kind of feels like Virgilia and Renove being that they possibly could be Kumasawa and Genji's alternate forms in another dimension, possibly. It kind of feels like Beatrice has known them before and hence created a version of them for her own purposes. And it kind of makes me wonder why and how did she know them. But then again, I was also reminded of what Kinzo, or more like what Beatrice herself is saying back in episode 3 when they were talking about Kinzo possibly having a secret child or something, and that child possibly being Beatrice herself. But at the same time, it's so weird because if Beatrice is Kinzo's child, then why is he acting so gross towards her? Anyway, that was just where my hit went for a little moment. Those guys weren't even here in the beginning. Because I've been loafing around, crazier and crazier witches have been introduced. And now they've hijacked this game between me and Beato.
取り返さねえとな。ベアとのゲーム版は今は俺が預かってるはずなんだ。その俺がここでぼんやりしてるわけにはいかない。
ありがとう。その言葉をこの子に聞かせてやりたかった。
きっと聞こえていますよ。お嬢様はそれにお返事することができないだけです。
Beato lay there silently, like a living doll with doll eyes. The game board that she had created herself had been hijacked by incomprehensible people and was being turned into a mess. Beato had called on me to be her opponent. Then this game must be something she created for me. I've got to take it back.
待ってろ。俺が取り返してくれ。
Of course, Beato didn't respond in any way. That's right. If she can't respond, then I have to protect it in her place.
行ってくるぜ。ワルギリア、ロノエ、黄金の眠り姫の面倒を頼むぜ。
はい、お任せを。
いってらっしゃい、バトラ君。
And they're so nice here. I mean, they were nice before, but then episode 4 kind of made me see them in a little different light.
そしてどうかこの子のいないゲームにてこの子の何かを見つけてあげてください。もしそれを見つけることができたなら、たとえこの子が不在であっても、あなたはこの子と戦ってくれたことになる。
そうだよな。ああ、全然ダメだぜ。俺は何やってるんだ。
Let's go. And let's take it back.
魔女ども、待たせたな。俺の休憩は終わりだぜ。
When he faced the jet black heavens and yelled this, the whole world shattered as though it was made out of thin glass. Then, as though it had been that way since the beginning, it transformed into that smoking room where Battler had fought Beato so many times, and which the two witches had now hijacked.
なにあんた、今頃戻ってきたの？超遅すぎ。もうゲームは2日目どころか大詰めも大詰めよ。
バトラがいつまでも来ないから私が勝手に進めちゃったわ。
Yeah, like you ever even waited for me in the first place?
ベルンはあんたよりずーっと頭が冴えてて痛快だったわよね。
うるせえ。プレイヤーは俺だ。
That's right, tell them off, Battler.
代役の魔女どもは引っ込んでろ。
別に今から参加しても構わないけど、もう出番ないわよ。
確かに。だってもうクライマックスもクライマックス。これで多分ベルンが詰めてゲームセットだもの。
なんだと。
いいんじゃない？最後の詰めくらい見物しても。
そうね。おいでなさい、後ろ宮バトラ。もうほとんどおしまいだけど、私の作ったキュートでエレガントなゲーム、エピソード5、エンド・オブ・ザ・ゴールデン・ウィッチ。
Oh no. At the end? No, right? No? Characters? Okay, let's take a look at the characters. I wanted to take a look at the characters actually, but kind of slipped my mind. This is the same. With Kinzo, pretty sure. Krauss. Let me just skim through it. Looks the same as well. Jessica, corpse discovered in the cousin's room on the upper floor of the guest house. The direct cause of death is unknown, but her neck was sliced open by a sharp blade. The wound was deep enough that anyone could easily confirm her death with absolute certainty. It's a bit different from Beatrice's game board because it doesn't have the, what I would call like the flavor text at the bottom. Flavor text? Is that even the word for it? Hideyoshi? Corpse discovered in a guest room on the first floor of the mansion. He had been pierced through the back with a demon stick. Its tip reached as far as his lungs. Because he was lying face down on the bed, suicide must be ruled out. Really? Not necessarily, but in any case... George, corpse discovered in the cousin's room on the upper floor of the guest house. The direct cause of death is unknown, but his neck was sliced open by a sharp blade. The wound was deep enough that anyone could easily confirm his death with absolute certainty. So it kind of seems like instead of guns or some big object that smashes people's head in, it's a knife or something that slices people's neck open. Or Rosa, corpse discovered in the cousin's room on the upper floor of the guest house. The same room as Jessica? In the exact same way. It might be the second Twilight, but that's kind of weird too. No, Maria is also in the same room. In the exact same manner. Oh, okay. 4 of them. 4 of them. Oh, this is the first Twilight. That's kind of weird though. It's kind of different. Genji, corpse discovered in the servants' quarters on the first floor of the mansion. Direct cause is unknown. Okay, it's the same thing. The only difference though is with Hideyoshi, where he is not. His neck isn't sliced open though. He's stabbed through with a demon stake. Everyone else has their neck sliced open, which is really, really odd. Usually the first Twilight would be exactly the same, I would say. All of them would die in almost the exact same way. Now they're all in almost different places throughout the mansion. Well, 4 of them are in the same room. 2 of them are in the mansion. I want to look at the witch's side though. I think... Oh, okay. Beatrice's one's different. Beatrice, the Golden Witch, and the Endless Witch. Beato's piece, who represents the witch illusion, claims that the entire incident on Rakenjima was caused by the witch illusion. In the 5th game, she clashes with Brinkastel, who denies this. What? Huh? Because she is no more than a piece, and the higher plane version of her has withdrawn from being the game master, she is not in a position to know the truth behind the 5th game. This means she is in a different position than the one she held in her previous games. Not entirely sure what that means right now. What is this? What does this mean? Why is it Beatrice and Brinkastel on 2 different ends, and then Lambda and Battler is, you know, down instead of whatever Beatrice and Brinkastel has going on? Brinkastel, the Witch of Miracles, also known as the witch who knows that miracles don't occur. Oh man, that's depressing. It's kind of depressing. Participates in the 5th game as the player opposing Beato. However, from the very beginning, her aim has been to deny the witch illusion. Her only goal is to destroy Beato and her world as a way to stave off boredom. Though she does deny the witch illusion, she is no ally of Battler's. Okay, so maybe possibly it's... The layout is like this because Brinkastel and Beato are in a match now. Although, for some reason, it shouldn't be like this, right? Shouldn't it be Lambda versus Battler? Or Lambda versus Brinkastel? I'll take a look at everyone else's. Ushinomiya Battler, the man designated by Beato as her opponent during the first 4 games, discussed it at how Lambda Delta took over as game master for the 5th game. He is not taking part in it as a player. Okay. Kinda makes sense. But it's kinda interesting that Battler is on the witch's side now. Lambda Delta serving as the 5th game's game master in place of Beato, who stepped down from the position in the 4th game. Because of that, the story of the 5th game, while appearing very similar to the previous games, is expected to turn out quite differently. Just like Brinkastel, she has no love for boredom and might be friend or foe with Beato or Burn depending on the situation. And I'm gonna assume that the 7 sisters will be the same as well. These are Beatrice's. Everyone on the left side, including the Seven Sisters of Purgatory, are Beato's original cast of furniture. Interesting. Just her sisters are, I guess not. Yeah, I mean, Beatrice borrowed them, I guess. Anyway, let's continue. The second day, October 5th, 1986. Oh, Eva, yes. Eva would be crying, devastated. Her son and husband both died. Right now, no humans exist on this island except for those in this parlor. What about Kinzo? I mean, we know Kinzo is dead, but what about him? And with one exception, it has been shown that none of them have committed murder. And the culprit is among these people.
おいおいとなると決定的じゃねえか。
魔女が犯人で魔法で殺人を犯したわけでない限りね。あんたなの？あんたがジョージを、主人を殺したの？どうしてよ？どうして？私は殺していません。私は何も。
Well, Natsuhi would also be very frantic because her daughter died as well. In a panic and with a voice that really couldn't be called flowing, in a manner that was, to put it coldly, unsightly, Aunt Natsuhi denied the suspicion placed upon her. However, there was no longer any way around it. The girl stood up, brushed back her long hair, pointed at Aunt Natsuhi, and said it one more time. The girl? Huh?
あなたが犯人です。
Who are you?
後宮夏日さん。
Why did she kill Jessica? Ah! That scared me, actually. I'll watch this. Oh. Whatever it is, it seems like the new character is important, but who is she? Magic of Miracles.
夏日です。開けてください。
Natsuhi yelled as she knocked loudly and repeatedly. Is this the fifth game? Shortly after, there was a heavy clunking sound, and the sound of the door to Kinzo's study unlocking could be heard. If Kinzo is dead, then who is there? Kinzo and Krauss are into something together. As the door opened, a heavily sweet venomous odor flowed out. Natsuhi was always ashamed of how she automatically grimaced at that, even though she thought it was rude to the family head. Krauss was waiting for her inside the study. I knew it! Natsuhi flew into his arms.
お父様はお父様は
落ち着きたまえ。今、南條先生が見ている。
Okay, maybe not. I don't know. With an uncertain gait, Natsuhi went towards the center of the study, supported by Krauss. There, a dignified bed fitting for the head of the Ushiromiya family could be seen, along with Nanjo, Genji, and Kumasawa.
南條先生お父様は
Even Kumasawa? Here? After sighing deeply, Nanjo left the side of the bed. On the bed, Kinzo could be seen lying down, sleeping.
大往生だ。
He's dead. Is this the start of the game?
金蔵さんも心残りはなかっただろう。
お父様
Sobbing, Natsuhi put her head against the chest of the man who had fallen into a sleep from which he could never awaken.
奥様どうかしっかり
It's really interesting because in the very first episode, we already know how much the Ushiromiya family means to Natsuhi, but it's interesting to see now how she reacts to his death.
お父様お父様こんな突然なんて
Natsuhi couldn't stop her tears over the death of Kinzo, whom she had loved like a second father. Kumasawa rubbed Natsuhi's back, consoling her. Krauss slumped into his late father's favorite chair. By sitting there, he might have been immersing himself in memories of his departed father. Or perhaps he thought that by sitting there, he might be able to understand just a bit of the madness of Kinzo's later years, which had eluded him to the end of his father's life. Nanjo turned his back and looked down over the outside world through a crack in the curtains. It was the same thing he'd often done where Kinzo sat in a chair contemplating a chess move.
同じ死ぬならせめて寝込んで1年後に死亡とか。もう少し叱るべき準備の猶予期間を設けてから死んでほしかったのね。
How practical.
それは逆だ。最後の瞬間までお元気だったことを喜ぶべきです。
Nanjo is the better person here.
建前上はそうなるがね。
Nanjo understood that as well. This was the death of Ushiromiya Kinzo, a man who had risen like a comet and glittered like a supernova in the post-war world of business. His funeral would probably be of a fantastic scale, and would also be the ceremony marking Krauss's inheritance of the headship. He would have to arrange everything as a host of the event, carry out funeral diplomacy perfectly, and make it clear that the Ushiromiya family would still hold enormous influence in the political and financial spheres. As Nanjo watched Krauss, he was vividly reminded of the time when Kinzo had been suddenly selected as the Ushiromiya family head, a time in which Kinzo had been lost and confused. Nanjo could remember that well, and for that reason, he was able to understand Krauss's distress and sympathize with it. Natsuhi's sobs eventually subsided. Seeing this and leaving Kumasawa to care for Natsuhi as a fellow woman, Genji returned to Krauss. As he lowered his head slightly, as though asking what should be done,
手続き等は私と源氏さんでやろう。クラウスさんはまずは親戚の方々に連絡した方がいいでしょうな。
Krauss, with his hand still over his eyes, didn't respond. Perhaps, even though he had known this day would come, Krauss really couldn't hide his shock at how suddenly it had reached them.
私と南條先生にお任せを。旦那様はまずは奥様とご相談いただくのが良いかと思います。
Maybe she heard that, or maybe it was a coincidence. As though responding to Genji's words, Natsuhi came over. Her eyes were red from crying so much, but she apparently understood the heavy responsibility that had been imposed on the two of them even better than Krauss did.
これからはあなたが栄光ある後宮家の当主です。お父様の後を立派に継いだことを内外に示しましょう。この夏日、あなたの妻として棺を並べる日までお仕えする覚悟です。
She is really devoted to the family. Trying to encourage her husband, who was overcome with shock, Natsuhi lent him some reassuring words. And Krauss finally lowered the hands that had been covering his face. He looked up at the ceiling with a blank expression and let out a deep, deep sigh.
どうかしっかりお父様の残したものを食い荒らそうと目論む輩が大勢いるのですよ。私たちはお父様の名誉と財産を守るために戦わなければなりません。それが後宮家当主の最初の仕事ですよ。
分かってる。分かっているとも。
南條先生と源氏はお役所や葬儀業者への手配をお願いします。特に源氏。
She is really clear-headed in this situation. She has a really strong sense of responsibility to the family. Or just a really practical person, maybe. Even more than Krauss is. Even though she was so distraught before.
お父様の葬儀にふさわしいものとなるよう特に手配を頼みますよ。
かしこまりました。
それから南條先生、お父様は病院でお亡くなりになったわけではないので、
場合によっては解剖が入るかもしれませんな。
なんとかなりませんか？
Huh? Wait a minute. Huh? And it sounds like he didn't just pass away from old age, right?
亡くなったとはいえ、お父様の大切なお体です。
Okay, never mind. I should have just finished whatever she wanted to say. Still, that kind of gave me question marks. It made me kind of suspicious for a moment. But then again, that seed of doubt was indeed planted by Natsuhi and Krauss themselves back in, was it episode 2 or episode 3?
傷をつけるなど耐えられることではありません。
気持ちはわかる。だがそういうところをきっちりすることも大切だ。それにこう言ってはなんだが、難しい親族の方々が多いんじゃないかね。
There was no way to know what those inheritance vultures might try to find fault with. They might squawk that there was something suspicious about the cause of death and use that as a point of contention to start some trouble. Right now, not only was it important to pay Kinzo's remains the respect they were due, but there was also a need to focus on solidifying the position of the new family head, Krauss.
わかりました。必要最小限にお願いします。間違ってもお父様の威厳が損なわれるようなお姿にしないように。
それは大丈夫だ。安心しなさい。とにかく金蔵さんのことはわしらに任せて、夏日さんはクラウスさんのそばにいてあげなさい。これからが大変なんだから。
分かっています。あなたもどうかしっかり。
Krauss was still staring lazily at the ceiling with a befuddled expression on his face. Natsuhi understood the shock and heavy responsibility. She felt that she understood her husband's feelings as well as anyone possibly could.
親族への連絡は私がします。今だけは休まれてください。
Krauss didn't respond. Natsuhi thought that he was being a little bit weak, but that just made it all the more important for her to support him right now. Seeing her husband like this actually stirred Natsuhi up, and the resolute expression rose to her face.
これから忙しくなります。今できることを始めましょう。
夫はきっとお父様と二人きりで話したいこともあると思います。私たちは一度ここを退出しましょう。
そうでございますね。その時間はきっと今しか取れないでしょうから。
Being in charge of a funeral is tiring work. There's no time to shed tears. If Krauss were ever to be given time to cry for his dead father, that time would have to be now. Everyone agreed with Kumasawa's words. Even then, Krauss continued to lazily gaze up at the ceiling and didn't respond in any way. Well, different people cope in different ways, right? Natsuhi urged the servants to go.
私はジェシカにも話してきます。今やあの子が次期当主です。それにふさわしい自覚を持つようによく言い聞かせなくては。
待て。
As they each started to make their way out of the study, Krauss finally spoke. They stopped walking.
はい。
待て。
はい。
Hadn't she already stopped walking, just like her husband had asked? But despite that, he had once again told her to wait. From those slightly weak words, Natsuhi understood that he had probably stopped her because he wanted her to be by his side.
お前たちは下へ。
She is so... observant?
私は夫と言います。何かあったらここに電話するように。
かしこまりました。だから待てと言っている。
Oh, maybe not. And that's kind of scary. When Krauss suddenly raised his voice, everyone jumped and turned around. Unable to comprehend what she had done to spark her husband's wrath, Natsuhi ran up to him.
どうしましたあなた。私は何か失礼なことを口にしてしまいましたか。だったらお許しを。
I still feel like their relationship is not healthy and also a little... Well, weird's not the word, but I hope you understand.
いや、違う。そうじゃない。そうじゃない。少し待て。時間をくれ。
ええ、わかっています。心を整理するためにも必要です。私たちはその時間をあなたにあげようと、ここから静かに出ていくだけですよ。
だからそれを待てというのだ。いいか、誰もその場から動くな。一歩たりともだ。疲れたなら椅子にでもソファーにでも好きに座ればいい。だから何も喋らずに静かに黙って何もせずにいろ。
What's happening? Those unreasonable words felt like a glimpse of how Kinzo used to be. Natsuhi couldn't hide a slight surprise at those words, which made it seem as though Kinzo had possessed her husband. Natsuhi told the servants to wait for the time being. She ordered them to sit in the sofa a short distance off, approached her husband, and spoke to him in a small voice.
あなたがお命じになれば、夏日はいくらでも待ちます。とどまります。
Oh, it's kind of... I don't like it.
ですからどうか、お気を鎮められてください。
違う。そうではないのだ。そうではないのだ。
Was it really his father's blood, or was he actually being possessed? Krauss's disorderly style of speech strongly resembled Kinzo's. As she watched this, Natsuhi felt with even greater certainty that Krauss was indeed Kinzo's son, and that he was a true successor to the head, more suitable than any other person. Natsuhi, as much as I like her, she does not seem very okay.
夏日、こっち。
Krauss stood up and headed towards the window, trying to lengthen the distance between himself and the servants, waiting on the sofa by even a small amount. Natsuhi realized that he must have something secret that he wanted to talk about, then why ask the other servants to stay behind?
はい、あなた、何事ですか？
親父に死なれてはまずいのだ。
しかし、もうお亡くなりになりました。
I see. This must be the secret.
そういうわけには参りません。
そうじゃない。今はまずいんだ。
どういうことですか？
親父の財産を担保にしている。 相続問題になれば隠しをせない。
はあ、担保ですか？いかほど？
メロディーランドの時、近藤君を応援したことがあっただろう。
あの方とは縁を切れと申し上げたじゃありませんか。私には断ったと言ったはず。どうして？
男の義理というものがある。断れなかった。
Krauss claimed to hold honor as a virtue. However, Natsuhi knew that he most often used this as an excuse after he couldn't bring himself to pass up a deal.
お金に余裕があるならいざ知れず、この島のリゾート計画でかなりの借金をされたのではありませんでしたか？
ああ、したさ。方々で恩人に世話になったのだ。それらを返済するためにも座しているわけにはいかない。返済するためには金がいる。金を生むためには金がいる。金がなければ始まらない。この島の計画だって企画会社がおかしなことにならなければ順調だったのだ。都の役人とも連携は取れていた。東京都の新しい観光スポットになると知事の太鼓判ももらえていた。私の根回しは完璧だったのだ。たまたま巡り合わせとタイミングが悪かった。
Oh, Krauss, classic Krauss, blaming everyone but himself.
ちょっとした運のすれ違い、事故みたいなものだった。
あれは事故なんかではありません。詐欺です。あなたは騙されたのです。初めから彼らはこの島のリゾート計画など描けていなかったのです。
そんなことはないぞ。土方君のビジョンは先見性にあふれていた。世界と未来に目を向けた広大な視野は私が夢だと信じていたものなど猫の額ほどの広さしかないことを教えてくれた。
He's really hopeful. Krauss is a dreamer.
夢が広がる。世界に未来に。夏日も一緒に聞いていただろう。
ええ、聞いていました。そしてお帰りになられた後に申し上げたはずです。あの方はうさんくさい。語るのは未来ばかりで地に足がついていない。これ以上お付き合いしてはならないと。
土方君は立派な好青年だ。彼の生き様からは学ぶことも多いぞ。彼は若いが尊敬できる。彼のことを侮辱することは許さんぞ。
あなたは同じことを月旅行の時にもおっしゃいました。
Holy shit. Just bad ideas after bad ideas from Krauss.
先見性がある、未来がある、夢があると連呼され、その挙句はいかがでしたか？荒唐無稽な話だったとあなた自らがお認めになったではありませんか。私はNASA の高官とか名乗るおかしな男が現れた頃からこれは絶対におかしいと確信しておりました。
Oh my god, Krauss, you idiot.
あれはあの外国人が国際的な詐欺師だったに過ぎない。あの件については私も曽根崎氏も被害者だ。彼の先見性は今をもって間違って、将来必ず世界の大富豪が宇宙旅行をたしなむ時代が訪れる。
It's kind of funny because even now that's not a thing yet, right?
そしてその最初の事業は民間1社によって独占されるだろう。着眼点は間違っていない。それを利用して世界中の投資家を騙している国際的な詐欺集団がいて。
Oh god, Krauss.
曽根崎という男もその一味だったと申し上げているのです。あなたはどこまでお人よしなのですか？どうしていつもうさんくさい話を疑いもせずに乗ってしまうのですか？
訂正しろ。曽根崎氏は優秀な未来ある男だ。
It's kind of nice though that Krauss sees the best in other people, but it's also hilarious that he always falls for them. For some reason, Krauss has a really gullible, naive heart. Might be his upbringing, but it also just might be Krauss himself.
うさんくさくなどない。彼の語る夢は未来を先取りしているからこそ、それが見えるものには妄想にしか見えんだけだ。
He is really delusional, but at the same time, he really looks in the best in other people. Maybe because it serves him well.
女のお前には未来など見えん。
Okay, nah, I don't like this line.
ええ、女の私には未来など見えません。でも現在なら見えます。私の目の前で狡猾な二枚舌の詐欺師たちに丸め込まれ騙されてなお妄信している哀れな夫の姿なら見ることができます。
黙れ。お前には金も事業も経済も何もわからん。夫の仕事に口は出すな。 妻は家事だけをしてればいい。お前は黙っていろ。
And here his misogynistic views comes out. Without another word, Natsuhi fell silent, just as Krauss wanted. He was already far beyond anger and sadness, and the emotion that lay on the other side of those was an almost indifferent pity. Krauss had always been frightened of Kinzo since the day of his youth, and had subconsciously come to admire the way his father lived. Without realizing it, he had come to believe that he could only be recognized as a man in his own right if he surpassed his father. However, Kinzo had been a mad genius, the like of which had never been before seen in the Ushinomiya family's long history. His talent was a gift from heaven, and it definitely wasn't genetic, much less something that could be learned. Krauss definitely didn't inherit any of that. Natsuhi instructed the servants not to tell anyone about Kinzo's death, and dismissed everyone for the time being to give the two of them a chance to talk alone. I would not want to be the servants in that room. It's so stressful. I don't want to be caught between a husband and wife fighting. Then she invited Krauss to her bedroom and made him tell her everything about their current financial situation. There were things that Natsuhi haven't been told about under the assumption that a woman had no business knowing. Natsuhi had herself made a point of avoiding this area in the past, thinking that it wasn't a wife's place to intrude on such matters. However, this might also have meant that she had been remiss in her duty as a wife to protect her family. The depths of the sin had been made quite clear to Natsuhi. Krauss was probably tired of trying to defend himself. Perhaps because he had gotten a headache, he hid his face and sank into silence. Natsuhi noticed that the water in the electric kettle was boiling and stood up to refill her cup with black tea. And when she touched the cup of black tea, she noticed for the first time the sound of the cup and saucer clinking together told her that her fingers were shaking. Krauss had built up a large debt to obtain funds for his various projects and to cover the losses when they failed. Of course, he had put the mansion and property up as collateral. However, doing such a thing above board would have resulted in a mortgage being registered. In other words, there would have been a record that Krauss had put Kinzo's wealth up as collateral to obtain a loan without anyone's permission. Krauss couldn't afford for Kinzo, Eva, and the others to learn of such a thing. Therefore, he had been putting those assets up as collateral using the worst possible method.
権利書と委任状を預けた。
それはどういう意味ですか？
What Krauss was saying probably meant that he had, in essence, signed away the rights to their assets. Ah. If those assets had been used as collateral for a loan, then Krauss would have had some options under the law. He would have had to deal with a bank which would have absolutely no compassion, but they would have been able to work something out within the rules set by society. However, signing away the deed and power of attorney was a whole different story. In short, even the mansion they were living in was at risk. If the person holding the deed were to decide to ignore his agreement with Krauss and sell the mansion to a third party right this moment, they would have no recourse whatsoever. Far from using their house as collateral for a loan, this was basically the same as selling it to borrow money.
Tsumari, 後宮家の生殺与奪は金貸したちの手に委ねられていたわけですね。彼らがほんのわずかの気まぐれを起こして突然この家を売り払ったら、私たちは今すぐにも荷物をまとめ出ていかなくてはならないということですね。
理屈上はそうだ。だが取引の相手はいずれも社会的信用のある人物ばかりだ。
Not this again. No doubt if it's Krauss, it's probably someone who probably is gonna sell this mansion at any given moment.
サラ金じゃないぞ。経済人同士の信用取引だ。私も相手を信用している。相手だって私に金を貸すことで私が大きな事業を成功させ、投資した額が大きくなって帰ってくることを信用している。委任状を預けたのは私の誠意と事業の絶対の成功を疑わないからだ。ここで渋ったらどうなる？自分の事業に自分で自信が持てないことになるだろう。
If your ventures had been successful, we wouldn't be in debt now, would we? Natsuhi only barely stopped herself from saying it.
お父様は亡くなりました。するとあなたの借金が白日のもととなり、他の兄弟たちに咎められることになるわけですか？
それだけでは済まない。多分刑事訴訟にも及ぶだろう。
刑事訴訟？どうしてですか？
君は知らない方がいい。
Huh?
とにかく絶対にこのことを誰にも知られてはならんのだ。
Oh, because fraud and whatnot, right? Krauss looked at the floor shamefully, shaking his head over and over. If it would come to criminal charges, then he must have broken some laws. He had probably been so intent on raising a large sum of money that he hadn't paid any heed to appearances. Krauss had seriously believed that his many projects would definitely succeed and return huge profits. So he had figured that even if he broke a few laws, he would be able to pay everything back before too long and pretend that the whole thing had never happened. This might have lessened his resistance towards breaking a couple laws. And now Kinzo's death, the worst possible thing had occurred, and soon he wouldn't be able to keep it all hidden.
私たちはどうなるのですか？
心配することはない。君は信じてくれんが、景気は今確実に上向いているんだ。
I would not believe him.
私が都心で投資した不動産価値はみるみる上昇している。今それらを統合して巨大ビジネスタワーを建設する計画が進んでいる。これは私のこれまでの投資の中で最も確実で最も大きな成功をしているものだ。
Well, let's have a little faith in him, I guess.
ただそれは身をつけるのにまだ時間をかける。絶対に確実だが今すぐというわけではないのだ。
その事業の成功は借金を返済するに足りるものですか？
もちろんだと思う。これまでの借金を全て帳消しにできる。だから信じてくれ。もう少しだけ時間が欲しいんだ。
しかしお父様はもうお亡くなりになってしまいました。もうその時間はないのですよ。
分かっている。分かっているとも。だからどこかから金を調達して今すぐに借金を返さなくてはならない。とにかく金が必要なんだ。金が大量に今すぐ。
I remembered what happened episode 1, right? Therefore, more than anything, something about money. That was a line. Sorry, I forgot, but I remembered vaguely in my head. Krauss roared and clutched his head, writhing about as in pain. As Natsuhi watched, several conflicting emotions swirled about in her chest. She felt pity for her husband, but at the same time she felt he was a fool. And she also felt a mixture of anger and regret towards her own irresponsibility in letting her husband run wild for so long. It should have been clear to him well before today that they were in a very critical situation. And yet he had irresponsibly waited for this moment to come and was now writhing about. Her husband was so foolish and pitiful. It was easy to feel frustrated with him. However, she was his wife. For a wife to ridicule her husband as a fool would run in conflict with her responsibilities. If he was a fool, then she would have to support him to compensate. However, she didn't have a clue what she was meant to do about this. If there was a massive amount of money like that within easy reach, there was no way that Krauss wouldn't have already laid his hands on it. it would also be easy to tell him to be a man and give up on everything. But that would also run in conflict with her responsibilities. She was Ushiromiya Natsuhi, the woman who had become Krauss's wife and sworn to support him, the new head of the Ushiromiya family, for as long as she lived. I'm just thinking about it now, but since the gold does exist and everyone is in desperate need of money, I would say all of them are possible culprits, right? But the funny thing is, or maybe the sad thing is, that everyone at the end dies anyway. She had to somehow help her husband in his efforts to raise money. She understood it logically, but she couldn't suppress the indescribable feeling of dejection that seemed to rise up from the dark depths of her heart.
そうだ。親父の隠し黄金。10トンの黄金なら200億の価値がある。あれさえあれば、そうさ。あれさえ見つかれば万事は解決する。夏日、あれだ。魔女の碑文だ。あれを解こう。一緒に解こう。黄金さえ見つかれば万事解決なんだ。そうさ。この島のどこかに隠されてるはずなんだ。あれさえあれば、あれさえあれば。
痛い。羽、やめてください。
Krauss acting up as excited as if he thought up a perfect brilliant plan, grasped Natsuhi's upper arm tightly. Natsuhi couldn't help but be dumbfounded. It wasn't just because she heard something as fake sounding as the hidden gold brought up. Krauss usually disparaged the story of the hidden gold, saying that it didn't exist and that it was all a fiction his father had created to borrow a lot of money. Natsuhi was doubly taken aback because of this.
そうだ。ジェシカにも協力してもらおう。子供の感性でなら解けることもあるかもしれない。今は一家の一大事なんだ。みんなで協力し合わなくてはならない。そうだ。あんなの親父が作った気まぐれな謎なんだ。解けるはずさ。解けないはずがないんだ。それしかないんだ。ああ、夏日。本当によかった。まだ手は残っていたんだよ。こんなに身近に。
He's really at his rope's end.
この島に黄金はある。それさえあれば万事解決なんだ。夏日、ジェシカを呼ぶんだ。今すぐここに。家族の危機は家族で乗り越えよう。さあ早く。黄金はこの島にある。すぐ身近にあるんだ。
Natsuhi knocked Krauss aside, unable to withstand the pain in the arm he was twisting in his excitement. Krauss tripped over the edge of the bed and flopped pathetically onto the floor.
いい加減にしてください。そしてどうか冷静になられてください。後宮家の一大事にそんな夢みたいなことを言い出してどうするというのですか。
夏日。
あなたもよく頭を冷やされて現実的な金策をお考えになってください。私も頭を冷やしてきます。
Natsuhi is so... I don't want to say the word mature, but emotionally mature, maybe, yeah. She's not picking a fight with Krauss. She knows how to go off and cool her head instead of making the situation even worse, which is a good thing.
待ってくれ、夏日。
Maybe falling over had knocked the sense back into him. Krauss tried to tell Natsuhi to stop, but she just kept walking. Closing the door forcefully, Natsuhi dashed away. Natsuhi ran through the corridor. Oh my. She didn't want to see anyone. She didn't want anyone to see her like this, but she ran headlong to Genji.
大変失礼いたしました。奥様、お怪我はございませんか？
私は大丈夫です。放っておきなさい。
かしこまりました。
源氏、お父様の書斎はどうなっていますか？
そのままにしております。南條先生は客間におられますが。
そうですか。書斎の鍵は持っていますか？
はい、 ございます。
お貸しなさい。しばらく私とお父様の二人きりにするように。もし主人に私のことを聞かれても知らないというのですよ。
かしこまりました。
After grabbing the keys to the study that Genji was holding out to her, Natsuhi rushed up the stairs. She then flew into the study, and finally she cried out loud.
お父様、愚かな私たちをどうかお許しください。私と主人はお父様の築き上げてきたものを受け継ぐことができます。罪深く愚かな私たちをどうかお許しください。そしてもしどうか愚かな私たちをお導きください。
Clinging to Kinzo as he slept in a bed, Natsuhi cried even harder. She kept imagining Kinzo sitting up suddenly and petting her head. No, father isn't a type of person to pamper. More likely, he yelled at me to stop being so noisy. However, neither of these imaginations would come true, because it was an undeniable fact that Kinzo had entered an eternal sleep. But even so, Natsuhi begged the sleeping Kinzo to forgive and help them. It had only been a few hours since his passing. Perhaps his soul was still there listening to her. Believing this, Natsuhi begged for Kinzo's forgiveness and helped even more earnestly.
やかましいぞ。
That's scary.
私は沈黙を尊ぶといつも言っている。
That voice made Natsuhi jump up in surprise. Huh? Is his eyes gonna open? It did. When she faced in the direction that the voice had come from, she saw Kinzo sitting at the study desk, folding up his reading glasses.
またクラウスと喧嘩をしたのか。
Is she imagining this?
嫁をいたわらぬとはクラウスめ。私の悪いところばかりを受け継ぎよる。
お父様。
なんというみそぼらしい顔か。顔を洗え。仮にも後宮家次期当主の妻ではないか。そんな情けない面を使用人に見せてはならぬぞ。
はい、お父様。失礼しました。
Natsuhi understood. This was just an illusion, one that Natsuhi had created from a desire to speak with Kinzo and the memories of the man as he once was. No, that's not it. She believed that just for now, Kinzo's soul had shown itself to her. She was sure that doubting this would cause it to vanish in an instant.
当主の座が継承されたと同時に早速
はい、お父様。夫を支えることができませんでした。本当に申し訳ありません。
つくづく後宮家は呪われている。私が当主を継承した時もそれはひどいものだった。お前たちの苦難などまだまだ可愛いものだ。
Kinzo's succession to the family head came suddenly. At the time, he was nothing more than a young man from one of the branch families, far separated from the Ushiromiya main family. The main family might have had honor and tradition, but that was of no relevance at all to Kinzo, and he couldn't have cared less. Then the principal members of the main family were wiped out in a great Kanto earthquake, along with their businesses. On top of that, there was a complicated antagonism between the members of the family at the time. Well, that's happening right now. And the elders were all trying to impose their will on the others in that sinking ship. Because of this, they weren't even able to elect a leader to rebuild the Ushiromiya family. They found common ground by selecting Kinzo, a youth with absolutely no ties to any of the opposing elders, to be the head. So the elders hadn't really entrusted Kinzo with the rebuilding of the Ushiromiya family. Kinzo had been nothing more than their puppet, with his arms and legs being pulled in opposite directions.
はい、お父様の苦難の日々はよく存じております。
そして戦争が始まった。当時の私はもう生きていくことに疲れ果てていた。戦場で死ねればと願ったが、前線には送られなかった。
Even Kinzo had that moment, huh?
しかし、日に日に戦況が悪化し、本土決戦の時が近づいてきていた。私は不謹慎にもその日が早くやってくることを願っていた。
Now this is a part of Kinzo I've never even known before. It was said that as Kinzo listened to Death's approaching footsteps day in and day out, he started cutting his ties with this world, one by one. And then, on that day when he had freed himself from all his attachments to life and reached a state of enlightenment, he had a mystical experience. And he met her, the Golden Witch, Beatrice.
私は魔女と契約を交わし、黄金と狂気の力を与えられた。その日を境に、古き私は死に、狂気の魔力を得た新しき私が誕生したのだ。
存じております。そして戦後、お父様は天才的辣腕にて後宮家を復興させるのです。
Now deceased elders who knew Kinzo at the time had whispered to each other that Kinzo must have taken a knock to the head on the battlefield and returned with a different personality. That was how much Kinzo stood out after the war. Whether the story about Kinzo meeting a witch was true or not, there could be no doubt that the extraordinary experience of war had prepared him for death and let him reach a new state of enlightenment. Natsuhi must surely have felt that if Kinzo had decided to describe that resulting mystical experience as a meeting with a witch, that wasn't something she could flatly dispute.
そうですね。お父様は戦争からお帰りになり、魔女ベアトリーチェを従え、真の意味での後宮家当主となられたのです。
そうだ。ベアトリーチェに出会う以前の私は、当主と呼ばれるだけの人形に過ぎ、私は黄金の魔女を従えて初めて当主たり得たのだ。
お父様、その黄金の魔女は新しき当主である夫クラウスには力を貸してくださらないのでしょうか。
貸すであろう。真に当主を継承したならば。
真に継承するとはどういう意味ですか。
真の意味で後宮家の当主としての責任と誇りを持てるかどうかということだ。夏日、お前ならば分かっているはず。当主とは血で継承されるものではない。魂と信念によって継承されるのだ。クラウスが我が長男であっても、それがなくては真の当主とは呼べない。そしてそれが心に宿されていたなら、その人間はたとえクラウスでなくとも立派な新しき当主である。黄金の魔女ベアトリーチェはその真の当主に力を貸すであろう。そうであるな、ベアトリーチェ。
What? When Kinzo called the witch's name, gold butterflies seethed out of every corner of the room. This fantastical scene had an otherworldly beauty to it. It was like standing in the midst of a blizzard of golden flower petals being blown about a rose garden of gold. As Natsuhi stared at the scene in shock, The gold butterflies gathered and formed a human shape. Then, the witch of the portrait appeared.
いかにもわらわこそが後宮家顧問錬金術師黄金の魔女ベアトリーチェである。わらわは奔放にして自由、誰の命令も聞かぬ。
それを世界でたった一人、私だけが支配した。
Sure, Kinzo.
だからこそ後宮家の当主たり得るのだ。
その傲慢さこそが後宮家当主の資格だというか。
傲慢とはすなわち自信であり勇気である。そしてそれに見合う力を得ようとする飽くなき向上心の表れである。だからこそ私はお前を支配した。
傲慢を語る男がそれを実現していく様を見るのは心地よいものだ。不言実行は強運なる者の言い訳に過ぎぬ。真の王者は持たぬ者さえも語る。そしてその傲慢を確かに実現してみせるのだ。わらわを支配できる者にはその王者の傲慢が必要だ。
わかるか、夏日よ。真の王者はあらゆる苦難を恐れぬ。必ず乗り越えられると公言する。その算段がなくともだ。だから弱者は希望を持つ。集い、あがめ、協力を誓う。そこに力が生まれ、有言は実行されるのだ。それを心に刻め。
はい、お父様。
Natsuhi understood. Through this mystical experience, Kinzo was teaching her the attitude required to overcome hardship, even after his own death. Feeling a warm sensation rise up in her chest, she let the valuable words Kinzo had given her echo through her mind over and over. Maybe that time when Natsuhi was in Kinzo's room in episode 1, it was all just a vision? A true monarch, in other words, as the true head of the Ushiromiya family, was not to fear hardship. They had to believe that they could overcome any hardship. If they could not believe themselves capable, then there was no reason why they would be. Natsuhi suddenly felt very ashamed of the way she had come into this room, sobbing and asking Kinzo what to do.
私は愚かでした。後宮家の一大事に泣き言を言う暇などあるわけもありません。そしてお父様から後宮家を引き継いだ以上、私たちは何があってもその名誉を守り抜きます。
ほう、どうやってクラウスの借金を返済するか、その青写真も描けぬのにか。
As Beatrice laughed unpleasantly. No, that wasn't it. She was testing Natsuhi to see whether she possessed the mental readiness to be a true monarch. Natsuhi didn't hesitate anymore. She answered clearly, gazing into Beatrice's eyes.
はい、今はどうすればいいのか、その方法をまだ見つけることはできません。しかし、私の夫は新しき後宮家の当主であり、ですから、夫に代わり、私が宣言します。
It's a little sad, this entire exchange. A little sad.
聞こう。
後宮クラウスと夏日は必ずやこの苦難を乗り越え、後宮家の名誉を守ってみせます。お父様にご心配をおかけすることはありません。
クラウスの借金の規模と惨憺たる状況については知っておるな。
はい、この屋敷さえも明日には立ち退けと命じられても拒めぬという最悪の状況です。遺産分配となれば親族たちに刑事告発さえされるかもしれません。しかし心配には及びません。そうなる前に借金をすべて返済し、名誉を取り戻します。
As she stood at attention with a resolute attitude, Natsuhi proclaimed this clearly with Ushiromiya Kinzo and Beatrice as witnesses. For a while, they remained silent, as though weighing Natsuhi's resolve. Then Kinzo chuckled and turned away.
惜しい。なぜにこやつが我が息子ではなかったのか。
その資質を持つ女を息子がめとったことさえ、これもまたそなたの強運よ。
ベアトリーチ、私の最後の命令だ。
当主でないそなたの命令をもはや聞く義理はないぞ。
おう、ならば新しき後宮家当主の命令に従え。
そなたはすでに当主でなく、クラウスは未だ当主ではない。わらわは誰に仕えよというのか。
お前にそれを委ねる。後宮家の当主を受け継ぐ資格があるかどうか、お前が確かめるのだ。
断るぞ。当主でなき男の命令など聞けぬわ。
いや違うぞ。これは遺言である。当主が残したお前への最後の命令である。
ならば従わぬわけにはいかぬか。わらわもつくづく付き合いがよい。
違うな。
ほう、
興味を持ったからであろうが。
つくづくそなたには隠し事ができんな。
夏日。
はい、お父様。
乗り越えてみよ、この苦難を。
はい。
To Natsuhi, that might have been nothing more than a simple response, but to Kinzo and Beatrice, it seemed to carry much greater significance. Beatrice nodded deeply, and with a motion as elegant as her dress, she bowed deeply before Natsuhi.
後宮家顧問錬金術師、黄金の魔女ベアトリーチェ。ここに後宮家の苦難を再び乗り越えるため、そなたの力となろうぞ。
ありがとう。あなたの力が必要です。私たちは必ずこの苦難を乗り越えます。
そのために助力は惜しまぬが、先に断らねばならぬ。かつて金蔵の窮地を救ったように、そなたに再び莫大な黄金を与えれば、この度の苦難は解決することは分かっている。しかしそれはできぬのだ。
そうですか。
すまんな、夏日。
Why, though? Why can't she do the same thing?
ベアトリーチェの黄金は私一代限りという契約なのだ。そしてそれを受け継ぐためには魔女の碑文を解かねばならぬのが取り決め。
黄金は碑文にて封じられている。だからそれを解けぬ限り、そなたに黄金の魔法は与えられぬ。
And it's not really magic, right?
わかりました。ならば他の方法でこの窮地を脱する方法を模索しましょう。主人は時間をかけるとは言っていますが、必ず借金は返済できると言っています。そのための時間を得ることができれば、この苦難は乗り越えられます。
よいぞ、夏日。続けよ。
しかし金蔵はもう死んでいるぞ。医者と使用人は葬儀の準備。そなたは親族たちにその連絡だ。そなたは自らその金策の猶予時間を終わらせる宣言をすることになる。自ら刃を下ろす断頭台も愉快なものよ。
Natsuhi gasped and looked up at the ceiling. There wasn't actually anything there. But even so, Natsuhi had found something.
降りたか、魔力が。
夏日、決まったか。わらわに望む奇跡の魔法が。
It seems more like Natsuhi's the new actual successor or hit, even. All of those who had witnessed Kinzo's corpse were once again gathered in the study. Krauss was still very unsettled and clutching at his head. Genji was as expressionless as ever. Nanjo and Kumasawa wore bewildered expressions on their faces. But in stark contrast to all of them, Natsuhi's expression was resolute.
あなたにもう一度お尋ねします。金策は間違いないのですね。
1年。いや、せめて半年あれば必ず実る計画なんだ。しかし、今すぐにはどうしても無理なのだ。
ならば。
しかし、お前も言ったぞ。親父はもう死んでしまった。
お父様はお亡くなりになどなっていませんよ。まだこうしてご健在であられます。
When Natsuhi said this, everyone looked up instantly, startled, because they immediately understood what those words meant. However, Krauss alone didn't get it right away and had to ask, "Geez, Krauss!"
それはどういう意味だね。親父はもう現にそこに。
繰り返します。お父様は未だにご健在であられます。ご自身の研究がお忙しいので、これまで以上に書斎を出ることはできません。ですから私たちは、お父様が研究に専念できるように、外務をすべて執り行い、お父様に不要なお仕事が及ばないようにしなくてはなりません。つまりそれは、これまでと何ら変わらないということ。理解できていますね、源氏。
はい。片翼のわしの家具は、これからも親方様にお仕えいたします。
熊沢、そして南條先生、私の話は、
それでいいのかね、夏日さん。
お父様は確かに今日、お亡くなりになったかもしれません。しかし、今この場にいる私たち全員が信じることで、お父様を蘇らせる魔法を使うことができます。
Magic.
無理ですよ、奥様。そんな、いくらなんでも。
解剖すれば死亡時期を特定される。不審がられることは避けられん。
お父様はお亡くなりにならないのですから、解剖などされる言われはありませんよ。
Oh no. Secrets and more secrets. Of course, she wasn't planning to make Kinzo live forever. The fake life given to Kinzo would last only until Krauss could repay his debts. After that, Kinzo's soul would finally be able to sleep in peace. Nanjo repeated himself that the time of death would be discovered during the autopsy, but Natsuhi said again that this wouldn't be a problem. Ah, now I know why. Is it because they're gonna burn Kinzo's corpse? So there is no corpse. But,
お父様は死亡届によってお亡くなりになるのではありません。
Natsuhi has been planning this for a long time.
そうか。失踪届か。
After clapping his hands together, Krauss stood up, shaking his fists. But still, even if he were to be reported missing, the scary or funny thing is that his corpse has always been found, right? And always in the boiler room with his foot hanging out. So he's not even completely killed. It's interesting.
そうです。借金が無事に返済でき、お父様にお休みいただける準備が整ったなら、その時にお父様の失踪を宣言します。
Timing will still be suspicious, though. Now, I'm just kind of wondering, actually. Maybe whoever is the culprit, whether it's Natsuhi or someone else, what if it wasn't Natsuhi that burned Kinzo's corpse, but someone else entirely, to mock her. To mock her by leaving his foot, the one thing that would identify him. Well, as close as identification as it could be. To taunt her, even after her death, or whatnot. That would be kind of insane. Rekenjima's vast, uncultivated forest was the perfect place to stage a disappearance. One day, Kinzo would go out to the forest for a walk and never return. They would search for him without success and then be forced to report his disappearance.
失踪なら死体がなくても死亡届を出せる。つまり死亡時期を隠せるということだ。どうだ南條先生、これなら何の問題もない。確かにそういうことにはなりますが。
I've been kind of thinking about this, but it's, if I'm not wrong, in, was it episode 3? When Natsuhi and Krauss, Natsuhi and Krauss were having that very shady conversation. They only mentioned Nuncho and Genji by name regarding the Kinzo thing, but Kumasawa is here, so what's the deal?
それで良いのですか、奥様。確かに私たちが黙っていれば、親方様がお亡くなりになられたのは秘密にできるかもしれません。
To be honest, Kumasawa is probably the one that you want to look up for the most. Isn't she the one very infamous for gossiping a lot? She can't keep a secret.
ですが、どこでどう間違って誰かに知られないとも。
She's saying right now, she's outing herself. Are you sure about this, Kumasawa? Do you want to say this?
熊沢、声が大きいです。お父様はあちらでお休み中なのですよ。起こしてしまわれるつもりですか？
It isn't a corpse. Kinzo is sleeping. As Natsuhi said that, Kinzo lay quietly on the bed as though there was nothing at all odd about her words.
Sa さあ思い出してごらんなさい。そなたがどんな姿をしていたのか、そなたがどんな日々を謳歌していたのか。
Once again, a storm of gold butterflies started to swirl, covering Kinzo's cold body. Really? No, right? He can't be alive. He cannot be revived. Ever. Then after the butterflies exploded into fine gold powder and disappeared, just like those fairy tales that have been told over and over since long ago, Kinzo slowly opened his eyes and sat up.
お父様。
No way. I don't believe it.
夏日、先に我が名誉のために断っておくぞ。私は生への執着からそなたにこれをそそのかしたのではない。
嘘つきめ、多少は予見していたであろうが。どうだ金蔵、体の方は。
悪くはないが、どこか夢の中のような感じだ。重みがないな。
この世にとどまることを許されぬ存在が未だとどまっているのだ。多少の不自由は諦めよ。
お体は本当に大丈夫なのですか？本当に大丈夫なのですか？
むしろ心地よいくらいだ。これが死後の世界の感覚ならば、幽霊気取りも捨てたものではない。
これにてどうか、夏日。金蔵はよみがえった。故に葬儀は不要。そなたの苦難はこれにて解決だ。
ベアトリーチェ。
As Natsuhi tried to find words of gratitude, Beatrice waggled her index finger and spoke.
感謝の言葉はいらぬぞ。支配者は傲慢であればよい。わらわは頼みは聞かぬが、命令には従うのでな。
それでも言います。ありがとう。これで主人のために時間が稼げます。あとは私たちの仕事です。
しかし夏日、確かに金蔵はよみがえったが、それは永遠ではない。我が魔力が続く限りである。半魔法の毒素により魔法は破られてしまうかもしれぬことを心せよ。魔法の断りを正しく理解し、その維持に努めよ。
Magic again.
わらわはそなたに奇跡を見せるが、それをつかみとどめるのは。
無論です。あなたにもらったこの奇跡を私たちは決して下ろそう。
それでよい。なるほどな。主と畳は新しい方がいいというのは本当らしい。 気に入った。わらわはそなたに仕えようぞ。後宮夏日、我こそは後宮家顧問錬金術師黄金の魔女。いつでも我が名を呼ぶがいい。さすれば現れ、わらわはそなたに奇跡を授けるであろう。
ありがとう。私は後宮夏日、あなたを刺激し後宮家の名誉を守ります。
So, Beatrice is under Natsuhi's contract now? I did say this, it really feels like Natsuhi is the true ruler of the family? Previous year. 85. Wait, did I miss its timing? I need to go back and check. I'm gonna end here for today, however. I'll go and check what the year was. I'm sure it has to be 1985 too, right? And my goodness, that's such a pretty CG. But I'm gonna end here for today. Thank you so much for joining me here today. It's an awesome prologue, and I really appreciate having the opportunity is not the right word, but I'm glad that I get to see a little bit of what went on in that time period before the murders took place and what led up to it. It's clear there's some sort of motive if anyone wants to commit murders, but still, I don't know, we don't know yet until probably later on why the culprit is following the epitaph, and also what the true motive is. In any case, I don't have an answer right now, but that's obviously expected, I would say. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you guys again very soon. If you like this video, give it a like. If you don't like it, give it a dislike. And I'll see you again next time.